Paul Walker's daughter had decided to pay tribute to her father in the most inspiring way possible. Not everyone can imagine the pain of losing a parent, especially at such a young age. Even more so, if it was a preventable incident and constantly being in the public eye, it worsens. This is what Meadow Walker, daughter of the Fast and Furious actor Paul Walker, had to go through. However, she was determined that her father would never be forgotten. Meadow was born in 1998, just as her father's film career was starting to take off. Her father and mother had split up not long after she was born. Despite this, they agreed to co-parent her. Paul had later confessed that at the time Meadow was born, he didn't feel emotionally mature enough to settle down. While he did everything he could to provide for his daughter and his ex, he was only 25 at the time. He also admitted that he was quite the party animal. Even though Meadow didn't live with her father, he still doted on her. Back in 2003, they would go on camping trips together as this was important to Paul for her to experience these things and grow. He would frequently share with her his passions for the ocean, animals, and nature. In an interview, Paul gave a rather chilling quote that stated even if he were 40, looking at her, he'd always know he was a dad. However, those heartfelt words would take on an ironic and saddening twist just a decade later. Meanwhile, as Meadow grew older, she decided that she wanted to live with her father for a bit. Although she and her mother had been living in Hawaii, the young teenager headed to California to spend some decent quality time with her dad. It was time for some dad and daughter bonding. Just days before he passed away, Paul had mentioned in an interview in 2013 how happy he had been with this arrangement. Everything was working out really well. Sadly, that happiness was about to be short-lived. On the last day in November 2013, Paul and a friend got into a Porsche Carrera GT to get to a charity event. Sadly, they would never step out of it. The car swerved off the road, hit a lamppost and went up in flames. News of the incident had spread quickly on the Hollywood Strip. Actors who had worked with Paul were stunned hearing the news. Hundreds and thousands of tributes were posted on social media, with several messages and prayers directed at Meadow as well. Certainly, a great deal had been lost in the crash. Not only were the two families left heartbroken, but many charities had lost one of their most generous supporters. Paul had been traveling to an event for his own non-profit group when the crash took place. Its team were also left devastated. As the funeral was held and his many fans mourned the loss of the movie star, Paul's friends and family began planning how to keep his philanthropic spirit alive. They first requested attendees to his funeral to make a donation to his non-profit group instead of bringing flowers. While plans were being made for charities, plans for Meadow had to be made as well. Meadow soon became the center of a custody battle between her grandmother and her mother. Eventually, her mother was awarded full custody in May 2014. However, there were still worse legal matters to deal with. Paul's father ended up filing a wrongful demise lawsuit against the estate of Paul's friend. Other parties affected had sued Porsche. It turned into a big mess that would take years to solve. These years had been the worst for Meadow. But Meadow was growing up, and she was determined to honor her father in any way that she could. So on her father's birthday, she launched the Paul Walker Foundation. Meadow had stated that she found herself reflecting on her father's passions. His passion for the ocean, recruiting animals, helping people, and his love for spontaneous goodwill. This foundation would be partnered with the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Meadow didn't take on this journey alone. Her family and her father's close friends, like his co-star Vin Diesel, had been constantly at her side. Now she was the public face of a charity that bore her father's name. This is a huge responsibility for anyone, let alone a teenager. Still, Meadow bore that responsibility incredibly well. She has attended important events in the name of her father and has even presented awards to those who had made a difference in protecting the world's oceans. This was even more impressive, seeing as she was still essentially being forced to relive what had happened to her father. Meadow, too, had filed a lawsuit against Porsche, which alleged that the lack of safety features in the car had caused the incident to take place. However, she didn't get the response she was looking for. In November 2015, Porsche made the statement that what happened to Paul was his own comparative fault, and the company was not to blame. But in July 2016, a judge ruled that Porsche still had a case to answer. Meanwhile, no matter what Meadow plans on doing with her life, she knows her father will still be very proud of her.